invited guests, adjudicators, colleagues, scholars, ladies and gentlemen. The one humble man before you is Nalulasi Masika Edwin, a Kenyan by citizenship and a public relations officer in a waiting professional, and a young leader by choice. I am happy today in what will go down today in Kenyan history as the greatest expression for democratical sovereignty and the strength of institutions and systems of governance, analogy in the human history of young and brilliant minds in the history of this republic, as we celebrate the first East African Regional Students for Liberty Conference and movement in our region. Kenya has made overstretching strides in its capacity as a sovereign republic since its inception and attainance of full independence on 12th of December 1964. We enjoy a new constitution full of hope and satisfactory centrality geared towards better service to Kenyan humanity through all inclusiveness in representative democracy, through provision of 2/3 gender rule, marginalized areas, minority inclusion, and people with disability representation in state policy legislation, giving hope for a just and equal society. Devolution of state governance to county governments rebuilds the vision of a true and defined state service closer to its citizenry. I celebrate without confusion the efforts of the noble and liberal-minded Democrats who put to themselves to task to see to it that Kenya adopts a new state face from the degrading yokes of colonialism and constitutional governance. However, the Kenyan political scenery, entrusted by the electorate to spearhead democracy, sovereignty, and the strength of institutions and systems of governance, has no ideological foundation. It is a vehicle that opportunistic politicians use to travel to parliament. Nay, it is a mask that they wear to avoid recognition by electorates, and that is as a man to applaud Mwalimu Julius Kabarage Nyerere in his critical reference of Kenya as a man-eat-man society. Today, ladies and gentlemen, Kenyan democracy and state sovereignty is embroiled, enshrined, and cocooned in a stereotyped, mediocrated mind, and I'm always surprised when I hear our so-called political leaders saying that they want their tribesmen to enjoy the national cake. Even divine manna was exhausted in heaven. Harambee may have had its positive aspect, but today it has become the avenue by which looters of public funds sanitize their ill-gotten wealth. We have also come to these hallowed spots of Catholic University of East Africa to remind Kenya of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism and self-protectionism. Now is the time to make real the promise of the constitutional democracy as is opposed to Kenya's current dictatorocracy of governance. It lies in congenital deformity of ethnicity that has crippled this nation since inception, for no one surveying the moral landscape of our nation can overlook the hideous and pathetic wreckage of commitment and twisted and turned to 1,000 shapes under the stress of sea of turmoil. I'm not convinced we are in a state that Portuguese call norm, for how can change be realized when our politicians suffer from amnesia and change political parties like they do their shirts? Kenya's problem is chieftaincy and opportunism that has crippled and defined our institutions of governance, hence tarnishing their dual mandate. For national integration has had flirtatious governance relationship with this country, I want to be the high priest who will preside over the marriage between national integration and this esteemed and so-called sovereign republic. The road ahead is still tricky and will require a lot of patience, tolerance, and level of headedness. We must be able to rise above divisions and do what is best for the country and not pander to partisan interests of certain individuals or sections of the society. This country is bigger than individuals and must always be given its pride of place. We can make a difference if we broaden the circle of our relationship and friendships, seeking the fulfillment of all that is good and decent within us, awakening latent possibilities and potential, and travel towards the path of self-actualization, self-realization, self-knowledge. Our lives should become part of a widening circle of meaning, not narrowing, as we develop ethically, morally, spiritually, and in our way of contributing to the changing of social fabric in our country, Kenya. On building democracy, sovereignty, and strength of institutions and systems of governance without close and acute-eyed check is nothing more than idleness, and that is why I may not agree with Joseph Momo of Sierra Leone on many things, but I do on one thing. That a journalist with a pen in hand is like a soldier with a Kalashnikov in hand. He can use it to defend or to destroy. When journalists are deprived of their mandate to keep this public informed through decorous laws in the parliament, is it what democracy advocates for? We can create our beloved community and society that our idealism and visions. Let us now dare to embrace this common vision and mobilize our resources to bring it into being. Let us build a society based on hope, and let us not only dream but create a new national unity, unburdened by bigotry and strengthened by a conscious commitment to prosperity through integral brotherhood and sisterhood. I stand up in articulation for one ethical doctrine, that social justice, ethnic equality, and democratic reforms are achievable in our nation through successful appeal to conscience of the individual. I believe that despite the acceleration of historical experience that reaches back 2.5 centuries of slavery, it's possible to ascend to a higher plane in human relations without violence or other forms of coercive force. Once in the American history of true and defining democracy, sovereignty, and inclusive strength of institutions and systems of governance, Martin Luther King spoke from the steps of Lincoln Memorial in 1963. He did so as a civil society leader on the backbone of Jim Crow segregation and against an apparent stagnant establishment. The rights to equality in the Constitution was a bad check made with insufficient funds. I rest the case today, ladies and gentlemen, in these delicious grounds, and take up the mantle. I have a vision of hope, a vision of all inclusiveness, a vision of integral communal statesmanship, a vision of true democracy and bounding state sovereignty, and a vision of unwavering institutions and systems of governance. A vision that one day all sons and daughters of Kenya, the grandmamas and grandpapas of this country, the mainstream young world, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its sovereignty, creed, and accustomed to the bare truth to be self-evident that all men are equal to task, championed but the young faces of intellectuals in the making before me, that will lead to the inevitable road that will drive Kenya, Africa, and the global world towards economic, social, political prosperity. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, young leaders. Thank you, fellow leaders. God bless Kenya. God bless Africa. God bless the global humanity and protect its sovereignty as a dignified republic. Asanteni sana, asanteni sana, asanteni sana, asanteni sana. Mungu